Fora TV, Idea Immersion. Visit us at www.fora.tv.
Why was it that for 50 years James Madison sat on the notes, and he kept meticulous notes of the debates in the Constitutional Convention and did not release them until he was an old man and the last of his peers — he was actually a very young man when the Constitution was written — and the last of his peers had died? Why did he make that agreement with them? Well, back in 1928, Charles Beard, who was a very highly regarded historian at Columbia University — his wife, Mary Beard, was one of the leaders of the suffrage movement in the United States, and also participant in the abolition, or the, what was it, against alcohol, what's that called? Temperance movement, yeah, the temperance movement. But primarily she was in the suffrage movement. And Charles Beard was a socialist, I mean, you know, as it was defined back in 1928, and proud of it. And he wrote a book called an economic analysis of the United States Constitution. And then that was in 26, and then in 28 he wrote another book called The Rise of American Civilization, which is a 2-volume set, which they probably have for sale here in the bookstore. It's still in print. It's an amazing history of America pre-1928, from the founding up to 1928. And there's a lot of really great stuff in it. It stands, in my mind, as one of the great histories of this country. Problem is that with regard to this particular little niche of history, Charles Beard simply operated on an assumption. He operated on conventional wisdom rather than going back and doing any original research. He concluded that the reason that they locked the door and the reason that Madison kept this information secret was because what was going on was you had a bunch of rich white guys who were trying to protect rich white guys in perpetuity and trying to create a society that would be just for the wealthy elite. And in fact, that's a meme that is, by conservatives, quoted very often by way of saying, see, this is how it's supposed to be. And by cynical liberals, quoted very often by way of saying, yeah, those guys, you know, it's a bunch of rich guys. We're smarter than that. You know, we've gone beyond that. Well, Beard put that out, and that became conventional wisdom. And in 1958, a fellow by the name of Forrest McDonald, who was sort of the heir to Beard — he was a professor of history at Columbia University, you know, occupying the chair and teaching in the classes where Beard was teaching — thought, you know, went back and read Beard's stuff and said, you know, he didn't do any research for this. I mean, he just wrote this as if it was true. And so Forrest McDonald was his name, wrote a book called The Economic Origins of the United States Constitution. It was first published by the University of Chicago Press in 1958, and it's still in print. And although it's, you know, it's one of these very dense academic books, but it's, you know, but it's still out there. You can find a copy of it. And he went back and looked at each one of the people who was involved in writing the Constitution, and state by state found the names of all the people who were in the constitutional conventions in each state who voted whether or not to ratify the Constitution, and looked at their past and their history and what they did and how they voted and why they voted and what was going on with them. And what he found was the exact opposite of what Beard had proposed. What he found was that the reason that they had locked the door and the reason that Madison kept the notes secret for 50 years was because those men were betraying their social class. Their goal, their ideal — these were idealists. These were the children of the Enlightenment, and their ideal was to create a society that really and truly was going to be egalitarian.